Hello, and welcome to Bolt Action Reloading. In today's video, we're going to be doing some more load development with our Thompson Center Compass chambered in 300 Winchester Magnum. Today's projectiles will be the 150 grain soft point by Hornady, as well as Hodgdon H1000. Stick around. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here and you'd like to see how I and the rest of me here make our group smaller, start now by subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell icon. That way you get notified when I post new videos and you won't miss anything. Today we'll be furthering our testing with 300 Winchester Magnum. Today we'll be testing the 150 grain soft point by Hornady, which may seem like an odd combination for 300 Winchester Magnum. There are a couple specific reasons for our test today. Number one, we had these in stock, which always makes testing easier. Also, because this is a flat-base bullet. The only factory ammo we've really had much luck with at all so far is a 180 grain flat-base projectile. And though this certainly doesn't have a very good ballistic coefficient, our short-range performance might at least be reasonable, and at this point we're really looking for projectiles that this rifle can shoot well. Before we get too far into our test, let's talk about our test platform today. Obviously, this is a Thompson Center Compass chambered in 300 Winchester Magnum. We've actually replaced the factory plastic stock with a Boyds Pro Varmint laminated hardwood stock. This stock also has been upgraded with the adjustable comb height option. We've changed our scope base out to a 20 MOA EGW long action scope base. On that, we've mounted our SWFA fixed 16 power scope, mil. It's actually currently wearing 30mm Seekins precision scope rings, as well as an FWFA bubble level. The factory trigger has also been upgraded with MCARBO trigger spring kit to lower our trigger pull weight. We're also reducing the recoil of our rifle with the Precision Armament M4-72-308 brake. At this point in our project, we've tested some initial loads, done some quick velocity node workups, and some coal testing. And today we're going to be furthering our velocity charts and pressure testing with this 150 grain class projectile and H1000. If you'd like to actually start this series from the beginning, I'll put a card up and you can check out our playlist, which should get you up to speed a little bit faster, but feel free to join us right now and maybe go back and watch those videos later. Before we get into our exact load details, let's talk about the source for our data today. Even though I do have the Hornady book, Hornady doesn't actually start H1000 data until 190 grain class projectiles. Seeing as we're well under that today, we actually had to go out to Hodgdon's website, and Hodgdon's website has a 150 grain soft point by Sierra that we're going to be using to base our loads off of today. According to their website, at 85 grains, we're going to have a compressed charge and should predict a velocity of somewhere around 3,255 feet per second. Being that this is a compressed load, we're actually probably not going to hit maximum pressure today. The actual pressure they predict is just a little over 52,000 psi, far from the little over 60,000 psi that this cartridge can normally handle. Likely we won't be able to exceed maximum pressure with any unsafe loads today. Today's load data will be very closely based on it. Obviously we're using different brass. Hodgdon's website actually used Winchester cases. My Winchester case is measured somewhere around 91.7 grains of water. Our ADG Brass has 90.65 grains of water. But today we're going to actually this will be our first firing of our ADG Brass. So obviously during our testing we will be fire forming. Our projectile for today is the 150 grain soft point by Hornady, part number 3031. This would be obviously a hunting round to some degree. We have tested the 168 by Berger, but like I said, this is a flat base bullet. We may find out that this rifle likes flat base bullets, so one of the reasons why we're testing it today, though the ballistic coefficient of only 0.349, it pales in comparison to the 168's 0.489, and honestly with those two projectiles, the 168 is actually able to achieve with the same powder, though a different charge, pretty much the exact same velocity. But today we're going to be loading at that same 85 grains of H1000. We're going to be loading up to that max charge of 85 grains, starting out down at 82.3 grains of H1000 and stepping up in 0.3 grain increments. Today's load will be a little bit in what I would call Satterlee style load development. We're shooting 10 shots, looking for velocity nodes, but again, also looking for pressure. Make sure that we find that this combination is safe to shoot in our rifle. Though with that lower pressure and a compressed charge, I'm pretty certain that that's what we'll find today. At least for now, we're going to be sticking with our SAMI approved cartridge overall length of 3.340 inches. One of the bonuses of this projectile in this rifle is that actually is one of the closest distances it lands at SAMI spec. And today we are just under 100 thousandths off the lands at 0.096. And we could certainly extend that a little bit, pull the bullet a little bit further out of the case and get that a little closer to lands and still stay well within magazine length. The primers we'll be using today is the Federal 215M large rifle Magnum primers. So now that we've talked about our loads, let's go out to the range and see what we can do. So guys, here we are back. Obviously nothing to write home about, but again, if I haven't let the cat out of the bag already in the video, the scope rings were loosening up, and that obviously was opening up this group. Actually, prior to our overall length testing that we ran before, this projectile actually has had the best groups in this rifle, at least as far as my reloads are concerned, being able to achieve 5-shot groups under that 1 MOA. So seeing as we turned out at 4.174 inches for the group size, I'm certain that there was a large portion of that was the scope loosening up. But don't worry guys, we've fixed the problem, and moving forward, hopefully won't have any more excuses. All is not lost. We really weren't shooting for groups today. Mostly we're checking for pressure and velocity nodes. So let's put our chart on the screen and we'll talk about it. Down at 82.3 grains, we started off at 3,179 feet per second. Now our max velocity actually was at 84.4 grains. We achieved 3,282 feet per second. But our max charge at 84.7 and 84.5, basically around that 32,070 mark. Between those two charges, we actually had an extreme spread of 3. But at our max charge of 85, we actually reached 3,271 feet per second. Keep in mind our low data estimated 32,055 feet per second. Seeing realistically only about 25 feet per second above that. Really no big shocker here today. I think we're right in line. And like I said, with that pressure of only 52,000, it's more of a how much powder you can shove into the case to get the velocity, more than worrying about pressure signs. Talking about nodes that we possibly found, looks like there's actually a lot of things to try. Looks like between 82.3 and 82.6, there was only an extreme spread of 3 between those two shots. A little bit wider trough between 83.2 and 83.8. That node there only had an extreme spread of 8 among those 3 shots. But moving all the way up to our max test, we only had, again, between 84.7 and 85, an extreme spread of 3 feet per second. If you'd like to include the 84.4 grain in that, our extreme spread moved up to 12. That is a pretty full case. We're really not getting that much velocity, so possibly loading somewhere around that 83.5 grains might be right what we'd want to do to see if we could get some consistent velocity. So taking a quick look at our brass, we'll look for pressure, and pretty much like all of the rest of the loads we've tested in this ADG Brass so far, of all the loads we tested, I certainly expected the least pressure signs out of this, and honestly, it seems to fall right in line with all of the rest. So far, this brass has been very difficult for me to read any pressure signs on. If I've actually exceeded the case pressure in any of these loads, I haven't seen any sign of it on the cases. The primers are obviously flattened, but again, we should be a good 8,000 psi below max case pressure. The cratering falls right in line with factory ammo that we've shot in the rifle. You guys can judge for yourselves, but I really don't see any pressure that would worry me here whatsoever. Now guys, obviously with the premium brass that we were shooting here, I really would have liked to see what groups we could have turned out had our scope been properly adjusted, but that's just what happened, and we can only move forward. We probably will do a little bit more testing for this, for no better reason than I do have a lot of these 150 grain projectiles. I'm not sure H1000 is the right powder to get the most velocity out of these projectiles. However, those nice velocity nodes and 3,200 feet per second, I'm really not sure what more you could ask for. Probably not a long-range load, but it certainly might be fun to test. I'm really not sure how far we want to pull these things out of the case, but we certainly can pull them out a little bit, run a little bit of an overall length test, seeing if we get even better accuracy out of these, putting them a little closer to the lands. Or maybe this is going to be the one projectile that we can load to SAMI spec and actually get it to shoot. Time will only tell. But even if you guys aren't reloading for 300 Winchester Magnum, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to put those in the comments section below. If you want to make sure you keep up with this project, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Hit the bell icon so you can get notified when I post next week's video. I hope to see you next week, and until then, stay safe in small groups.